Over the past century, thousands of people have vanished in the Appalachian Mountains. Officially, most are blamed on weather, wildlife, or bad navigation. But some cases don't add up. Tracks that lead in circles, radios that keep transmitting after search teams arrive, voices calling from places no one could survive. These are three of the most disturbing disappearances ever recorded in those mountains. Hi. I want to start by telling you about the time I got lost in the Appalachians. Not the way most people think of getting lost, not for a few hours or a single night, but the kind of getting lost that lingers in your bones, the kind that makes you feel like the forest has claimed a part of you. It happened in the fall of 2014. I was 29, working on my graduate research in biology, and I had planned a solo trip into a ridge in western North Carolina the locals called Devil's Spine. I had heard rumors about it for years, stories of hikers who wandered off the marked trails and were never found. I didn't believe in those kinds of stories, at least not fully. I had spent most of my life outdoors. I knew how to navigate, how to survive, and I thought I was prepared. I had my GPS, a topographic map, a small pack of essentials, and a solid plan. I left my fiancée with a detailed itinerary, noting the exact times I expected to check in. She knew the area was wild, but trusted that I was careful. And I was. At least, I thought I was. The first day was everything I hoped for. The ridge opened up into sweeping views of the mountains, layers of green and gold, sunlight brushing the peaks, fog rolling in and out like it was breathing. I hiked steadily, making notes on soil samples and collecting data. By evening, I had set up a small camp on a flat plateau. The air was crisp but not cold, the kind of night where the stars feel impossibly close. I ate dinner quietly, double-checked my GPS, and went to sleep feeling confident. It was the second morning when things started to feel off. I woke to a silence so complete, it was unnatural. Normally, even in the remote backcountry, you hear something. Birds, the rustling of leaves, the distant rush of water. But here, it was as if the forest had pressed a mute button over everything. My first thought was that it was just early morning, that the sun hadn't fully awakened the life around me. But even after an hour, nothing moved. The wind had stopped. The trees were still. The birds nowhere in sight. I shrugged it off and continued down the trail. That's when I noticed the first anomaly. My GPS signal flickered and then died entirely. I checked the map. Still fine, but I had no way to send a message. My heart started to tighten slightly, a knot of unease forming in my chest. I told myself I was fine. After all, I'd prepared for this. The third day was when I realized I wasn't fine. I had left early in the morning, intending to circle back toward the main trail. The terrain was steeper than I anticipated, rocky outcrops and narrow ledges making every step deliberate. At one point, I found an overgrown path leading off the ridge. It wasn't on my map, and there were no markers, just a faint trail of crushed leaves. I should have turned back. I didn't. I can't explain why. There was a pull, almost magnetic, urging me deeper into that forgotten stretch of forest. I followed it for nearly an hour when I reached a small clearing. Something about the place made my stomach drop. There was no wildlife, no wind, no sound at all. Just me and the forest, and a strange marking on a tree. A circle drawn in soot, roughly the size of a dinner plate, with tiny scratches radiating outward. My rational mind screamed that someone had been here recently, but there were no footprints, no other signs. That night, I camped in that clearing. I set up my small tent, but sleep came reluctantly. Every rustle, every shadow seemed amplified in the pitch dark. Around midnight, I heard it. A whisper. Not a word, not a sentence, just a faint voice carried on the wind. It was impossibly soft, but I knew it had said my name. My blood ran cold. I shined my flashlight across the clearing. Nothing. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I was alone, and the only path back involved retracing steps I wasn't sure I could find in the dark. I stayed in my tent, trying to calm my racing heart. The next morning, I packed quickly and continued. I noticed something that made my blood run even colder. Small footprints leading away from my tent, partially hidden under fallen leaves, in a pattern that suggested someone, or something, had walked in the dark very recently. And yet there was no one there. Over the next 2 days, the forest seemed to shift around me. Trails I had walked before disappeared, replaced with nothing but dense underbrush and jagged rocks. My water supply was running low, and every time I thought I recognized a landmark, it wasn't the same. I started leaving markers, small piles of stones, to track my path. I hoped, prayed, that someone would notice if I didn't return. On the 5th day, I came across a series of caves I hadn't noticed before. My training told me to avoid enclosed spaces alone, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, the air was cold and damp. My flashlight caught on markings similar to the one I had seen the day before. Circles, scratches, symbols I couldn't decipher. I called out. Nothing. And then I heard it. A low hum, almost imperceptible, vibrating through the air, through my bones. It was the kind of sound that makes you question reality. I stepped back, and the sound followed me, growing slightly louder, deeper. My stomach twisted. This was no animal, no wind. It felt deliberate, intentional. And then I realized I was being watched. I ran. Not blindly, but as fast as I could, navigating by memory and instinct. Branches tore at my clothes, roots snagged my boots, and yet I kept going. By nightfall, I stumbled onto a familiar ridge. My GPS briefly flickered back to life, and I sent a message to my fiancé. I'm alive, I'm okay. Getting out. Rescue teams found me hours later, dehydrated and exhausted, but physically unharmed. They combed the ridge and the caves I had passed. Nothing. No footprints, no markings, nothing left behind except the faint circle on a tree I had photographed before leaving. Even now, years later, I can't explain what I experienced. The Appalachian forest is beautiful, peaceful, but I know now that there are stretches where it is older, quieter, and sharper than you could imagine. Places that do not welcome humans. Places that seem to wait. Sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night and hear that hum again, echoing faintly in my skull. And I know, without doubt, that something in those mountains noticed me. Something that still watches. I tell this story not to scare you, but because the Appalachians deserve respect. They are more than trees and trails. And if you ever find yourself hiking alone, off the beaten path, know that some parts of these mountains are not meant to be mapped, measured, or conquered. I've spent most of my life in the Appalachian Mountains, hiking, camping, and exploring some of the most remote stretches of forest in the eastern United States. I've walked trails that few people know exist, slept under trees older than history, and listened to the strange rhythmic quiet that settles in these hills at night. But nothing prepared me for what happened one summer in 1998. when a family disappeared from a cabin just a few hundred yards from where I was staying. That year, I was visiting my cousin, who owned a small rental cabin near Spruce Knob, West Virginia. I stayed in his place, an old creaky building that sat on a hill overlooking another cabin deeper in the trees. That second cabin had been rented out for the week by the Collins family, Mark, Dinah, and their 2 children, Jason and Lily. They arrived a few days before me, and I remember seeing them unloading their car. They seemed like any other family looking to get away from city life. Friendly, polite, a little tired from the drive. They waved when they noticed me across the clearing. Jason, the oldest boy, shouted something about catching a trout in the creek before the week was over. I smiled and waved back, thinking nothing of it. The first few days passed quietly. I'd hear them sometimes from my porch, the laughter of kids, the crackle of their campfire, a guitar playing in the evening. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then, on the 5th night, I woke to shouting. At first, I thought it was just kids playing late, but the tone was wrong, sharper, urgent. I heard a man's voice yelling something I couldn't quite make out, followed by the sound of a child crying. Then, silence. No footsteps, no movement, nothing but the wind pushing softly through the pines. I stood by the window for a long time, staring toward their cabin. The lights were still on, flickering faintly through the trees. Eventually, I convinced myself it wasn't my business, maybe an argument, maybe nothing at all, and went back to bed. By morning, I regretted that choice. The Collins front door was wide open. The breakfast table was set, coffee still half full in the pot, plates waiting to be served. There was no sign of a struggle, no overturned chairs, no broken glass. Just absence. A strange stillness, like the air had been drained from the place. I called out for them. Nothing. I walked a little way into the forest behind the cabin. Their footprints led a few feet from the porch and stopped abruptly, as though they'd walked straight into the trees and disappeared. My cousin called the local ranger station, and by that afternoon, a search team had assembled. Rangers, volunteers, dogs. They covered every trail, creek, and cave in the area. For 2 weeks, they searched. Nothing. No footprints beyond the first few. No torn fabric, no scent trail, no sign of life. The only thing found came from a volunteer named Erin Maddox. She was mapping search grids about half a mile from the cabin when she radioed in, her voice shaking. "There's a clearing," she said. "It's not on any map. The grass is dead in a perfect circle. And there's a shoe here. Small, a kid's." When they found Erin a few minutes later, she was trembling. She said her radio had gone dead the moment she tried to call again. She also said she heard voices in the woods, not loud but whispering from all directions at once. She couldn't make out the words, except one that repeated over and over. "Stay." The next morning, she quit the search. That night, I stayed awake in my cabin, listening. Around midnight, I heard soft footsteps outside, slow, circling the porch. I turned off the lamp, my pulse thudding in my throat. Whoever it was stopped right beneath the window. For a long minute, nothing moved. Then I heard it. Faint laughter, like children playing, carried on the wind. When I finally looked outside, there was no one there. The next day, I checked around the porch. In the soft dirt below my window were small handprints, child-sized but oddly stretched, fingers too long, pressed deep into the earth as if something had leaned close to listen. The search continued another week, but the pattern was the same. Dogs followed scents that ended in the middle of clearings. Drones lost signal over specific areas of the forest. Even the rangers started whispering about older disappearances. families that had gone missing decades ago within the same few miles. After 3 weeks, the official search was called off. The cabin was boarded up, the case marked unresolved. Years passed. The story faded from the news, but locals still talked about it in hushed tones. How sometimes, late at night, hikers near that area would hear laughter or see the faint flicker of lights deep in the woods where no cabin should be. 5 years later, curiosity got the better of me. I hiked back to the site. Nature had reclaimed everything, the path overgrown, the cabin barely standing. But standing in that silence again, I could feel it, that same heavy stillness, pressing down on my skin like static. I didn't stay long. Some people say there's a logical explanation. Maybe the family got lost, maybe they panicked, maybe they fell into one of the hidden sinkholes scattered through those mountains. But I've been in those woods. I've walked every trail, and I know what a natural disappearance looks like. This wasn't one. The forest there feels alive in a way that's hard to describe. It watches, it remembers. And sometimes, when the wind dies and the air goes still, it almost feels like it's listening, waiting for someone else to step off the path. So if you ever find yourself hiking near Spruce Knob, stay on the marked trails, don't chase strange lights, and don't follow voices calling from the trees, because the Collins family did, and the mountains never gave them back. I've worked in the national park system for nearly 2 decades, and during that time, I've heard every kind of story. From hikers getting lost for a night, to people swearing they've seen things that don't belong in the woods. But one case still unsettles me. It's the only one I think about when I'm alone on patrol, and it's the only one I'll never be able to explain away. It was the spring of 2006 in the Monongahela National Forest, West Virginia side of the Appalachians. That's where I first met Ranger David Holloway. Holloway was a veteran, a quiet, steady man who'd been with the Park Service for over 20 years. He knew every trail, every cave, every emergency code by heart. People said if you ever got lost in those mountains, Holloway could find you blindfolded. He had that sort of reputation. Methodical, calm, dependable. I'd only worked with him a few months, but he treated me like an equal. We'd sometimes eat lunch together near the lookout tower, trading stories about search and rescue calls, animal encounters, all the usual. He didn't scare easily. That's what made what happened so strange. The call came in on a foggy morning in May. Holloway had gone out alone to check the trail around Black Elk Hollow, a remote area known for landslides and sudden weather shifts. It wasn't unusual for him to go solo. He preferred working that way. But around 9:40 a.m., he radioed dispatch. I was in the office when his voice came through the static. "There's someone out here," he said, breathing hard. "I think they're calling my name." Before we could respond, the signal cut out. We tried to raise him for 20 minutes. Nothing. No static, no interference, just dead air. By noon, a search team was assembled, myself, 2 rangers, and a local volunteer. We reached Holloway's truck first. It was parked neatly off the service road, keys still in the ignition, radio still tuned to our channel. The engine was cold. Inside we found his field notebook. The last page had a single sentence written several times in the same tight handwriting. "They walk between the sound." At first, I thought it was a note about bird migration patterns. Holloway was always jotting strange little phrases that made sense only to him. But something about that line bothered me. We spent the next 2 days combing Black Elk Hollow. The area is steep and wild, cut with caves, sinkholes, and sudden cliffs. It's the kind of terrain that can swallow a person whole if they make a wrong step. but Holloway wasn't the type to get careless. That first night, I volunteered to stay at the command tent near the trailhead. Around 2 a.m., I stepped outside to stretch my legs. The fog was thick, heavy enough that my flashlight barely cut through it. And then, faintly, I heard it. A voice. It came from somewhere deep in the valley below, low and echoing, almost familiar. It wasn't quite Holloway's, but close enough to send a chill up my spine. The voice said my name once. Then again, quieter. I froze. I called out, thinking maybe it was another ranger. But the sound didn't behave right. It didn't echo the way it should have. Instead, it came back delayed, distorted, like it was bouncing through layers of the forest, repeating itself, but wrong each time. When I reported it in the morning, the others brushed it off as stress or acoustics. Maybe they were right, but the next day, something else happened that made me doubt that explanation. The helicopter team spotted something wedged in a cliff about 60 feet above the valley floor, bright orange fabric. We rappelled down to it, and sure enough, it was Holloway's backpack. Inside were his water bottles, an unopened meal pack, and his handheld radio, still fully charged. But what caught my attention was the soil sample bag tucked in the side pocket. It was filled with dark, fine dirt, and scattered through it were tiny fragments of something pale, almost translucent. Bone, maybe, or stone. We sent it to the lab later, but the report came back inconclusive. Organic traces inconsistent with wildlife, was all it said. We searched the area below the cliff for days. No footprints, no drag marks, no sign of a fall. It was like the pack had been placed there. On the 5th day, I volunteered for one last sweep of the ridge near the old fire road. I went alone, against protocol, but I needed to see the place myself. Black Elk Hollow is strange country. Even when the sun's up, the light feels filtered, gray-green through the canopy. Sound behaves differently there. It bends, carries. You can hear things from miles away that seem to be right beside you. As I hiked, I kept thinking about Holloway's note. They walk between the sound. Around midday, I found a narrow side trail leading toward the base of a cliff. The dirt there was unnaturally soft, almost freshly turned. I crouched to examine it. And that's when I heard something move behind me. Not footsteps exactly, but a rhythm. A crunch of leaves, then a pause, then another, perfectly matching the pace of my own breathing. I turned slowly. No one there. But I swear, in that moment, the forest felt alive. Not metaphorically, but literally breathing around me. The wind didn't move the leaves, the ground didn't shift. It was deeper than that. A vibration in the air, like the world itself was inhaling. And then, faintly, I heard a voice whisper right at my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around, flashlight up, heart pounding, nothing. The fog had thickened again, curling low to the ground. That was enough for me. I turned back toward the main trail, but something was wrong. The path behind me wasn't there anymore. The markers I'd placed, the orange ribbons on the trees, gone. Just unbroken forest. For the next hour, I walked in circles. My compass spun uselessly, and the GPS flickered in and out. At some point, I started to hear the faint echo of my own footsteps following me, delayed by a second or two. Eventually, I stumbled into an old service road and managed to find my way back to base. When I emerged from the trees, it was nearly dark. The other rangers said I'd been gone for almost 7 hours. I could have sworn it had only been 2. We never found Holloway. A month later, the park quietly closed off Black Elk Hollow, citing unstable terrain. Internally, the report listed the area as high risk for search operations, and all mention of Holloway's case was buried under standard missing person procedures. But among the Rangers, the story kept circulating. New hires heard whispers. People talked about hearing their names called out in the fog, or seeing a figure in ranger gear standing at the edge of the cliffs, motionless, staring toward them. Some said it was Holloway, still out there. Others said it wasn't him at all, just something that learned how to sound like him. Last year, on the anniversary of his disappearance, I went back to the boundary line of Black Elk Hollow. The forest has reclaimed most of it now. There's no road, no marker, just trees and silence. I stood there for a while, half expecting to hear something, and I did. From somewhere deep inside the hollow came a faint sound. Not quite a voice, not quite an echo. It was hollow, rhythmic, layered, like 100 whispers speaking at once. I couldn't make out words this time. But the tone was the same as that night back in 2006. Calm, steady, deliberate. When I got back to my truck, I realized something strange. The hands of my watch had stopped at 9:40 a.m., the exact time Holloway made his last radio call. I don't tell this story at work. People already think park rangers hear too many strange things in the woods. Maybe they're right. But when I patrol now, I carry 2 radios. One for the team, and one that stays off, tuned to Holloway's last frequency. Every now and then, when the fog rolls in and the forest goes still, that second radio crackles to life, just for a second. And through the static, I can almost hear someone breathing. I tell myself it's nothing, just the mountains playing tricks on me. But deep down, I know better. Because the Appalachians are full of places where sound does strange things. Where echoes don't fade, they wait. And if you listen too closely, you might find that something out there is listening back.